definition, as well as childhood purpose. So, who's this great baby?
That would be me.
Okay.
And also my two brothers, Felipe and Miranda, that you guys have left. Which one? But yeah, this is me and my mom and my brothers. And how I look at survival in crossroads kind of relates to how I was raised. My mom was a single parent growing up, and it was just us. So with that being said, I had the ability to learn how to survive, which to me means financial stability. I never went without. Lights never were off. House was fully furnished with food. We lived in the suburbs of right outside of Atlanta, so it was a nice life. But I knew that my mother was doing it by herself. So to me, survival is just making sure that things are taken care of and everybody is financially stable. So in my life, a lot of my crossroads, I went about it in a survivalistic way versus any other way. Which one would bring me the most financial stability?
Ray, why don't you talk about thriving in crossroads?
Absolutely. Good morning, I'm Raven. Thriving for me, let me start with crossroads first. So crossroads, I do agree with Mia, it's those pivotal decisions that come up in life. It's like life's pop quizzes, except there's no answer key. It's just you and your mentality and your ability to make a decision that you need to make for you. Thriving in that context is making sure that you have your values, your vision, your goals, and a purpose that is guiding you where you're making that decision so you know what you're supposed to take. So I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. I grew up with my two older brothers, Ryan and Sean, and my parents as well. And if you look on the screen, you'll see a contract. Most of you might not be able to read that. But when I was 11 years old, my dad had myself and my two older brothers signed a contract that says when we turn 18, we would either be homeless, I guess, and move out, join the military and move out, go to college and move out, or just move out. those were the options. And I signed it, like I probably was just getting good at cursive at the time that I signed this contract. But it instilled in me a sense of purpose too, and discipline. My dad, he's not just that guy. He wanted us to have an idea of what we were going to do with our lives, starting out at an earlier age, and not just thinking about that when we were in our senior year of high school. And so having that in my forefront was good for me. It drove me to be more disciplined and to take things seriously. So I really appreciate that. I think that a lot of what he taught me along with my mother's sense of compassion and grace and orderliness got me to a point where I could thrive then, and I look forward to thriving once I did move out of the house. And if you can see the first 2 months rent part, I did not get that, so I probably need to revisit this contract.
And so, oftentimes our crossroads are formed by our families, but then there comes a point where we have to make our own decisions. And so, Nia, talk about your best life and getting a reckoning.
This is a picture of me in college. I have grown since then. It's like an aggressive, happy person there. But this would be my junior year of college. To me, it resonated more to put this picture on there than any other one. In college, my senior year, I found out that I was pregnant. So immediately, my brain went survival. And I've seen this before. Again, the relationship kind of didn't work out. So I was a single parent out the gate. So what I did was, things that to survive. I was attending courses because my advisor said that I could. But tell me if this makes sense to anyone. I had bowling class, I had a walking class, I had a weight training class, and I took tennis.
And what was the major?
Criminal justice. So at that time, I finished out the semester. I thought I was pregnant. Well, I'm not new. I was pregnant, and then switched to be online, and that came with the advisor. And that advisor took a look at what I had on my transcript and asked me what the hell I was doing. And it kind of got a little bit deeper than that. My mother did not curse at me growing up, but that was probably one of the first times I've gotten a curse out, especially as an adult. And at that point, she set me up for success. I was taking 6 courses to walk early, and I had to finish 1 course during the summertime. So this would take me to my first big girl job. I was making amazing money, so I thought about $26,000 annually as mom. Okay, as a tax case manager for DFACS. My mother, who went through the ranks of DFACS as I was growing up, told me I had 1 year in that role. And at the time, I'm thinking of everybody like, girl, this is good money. I'm not leaving here. The work is really easy. I'm not leaving. But I finished that 1 course, and I brought my manager my degree, and I said, hey, how much money do I get now?
Run it up.
And she said, nothing. Oh, you know, something big up, right? So my coworker George at the time was looking into teaching. There were shortage of teachers, so we decided to go to this career fair and take the GATES, and that's like foundational knowledge for teaching. It allowed people with degrees to have a 2-year certificate, and in that time you're supposed to go to school to get certified. So now I've pivoted my whole life. I'm now a teacher, high school teacher. I'm finishing up my master's degree in secondary education, and then COVID hits, right? And that created a disconnect with my students that I did not like. Teaching for me, that was a vital piece that I was now missing out on. So it brought me to, okay, what was my dream job? I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Let me go and try policing. So I discussed it with my fiance at the time, we was all in agreement, and I was about to start the police academy, and 1 week before then, I found out I was pregnant with my second daughter. People be busy, I don't know what they do. And at the time, he thought that I was going to quit and not go to the police academy. But that should have told me right there that he didn't know who I was. And I went to the police academy and graduated 7 months ago. Taser? No taser. I told them 3 days before graduation I was pregnant, but I didn't get pepper spray. They made me come back and get tased. If you guys want to see the video sometime.
So, Ray, there are many lives that you lived in the military. Can you talk about that and what was the pivotal point for you in transitioning to civilian life?
Yes, so I'll talk about first how I got into the military and tracing it back to the contract. Chris and hey, my dad, who had this thing about no lazy Saturdays, and every Saturday when we were growing up, we were either doing housework or we were in some kind of professional development as a child, to participate in programs like YMCA or CPR, and this one program called PDPA, which we'll dig into a little bit more throughout this talk. But the gist of it was that it was a computer coding course that we could take on Saturdays, and the purpose of PDPA as a nonprofit is to diversify tech talent. We're working on microphones, sorry.
Keep talking. Alma, turn your mic up. Go ahead and speak. You know what? Here's what we're going to do. Yeah, let's just stand up. Keep talking. All right.
Crossroads.
All right. So I participated in this program called BDPA on Saturdays. This program ultimately led me to be at my final year of conference participation, which was in 2009, where I had the opportunity to meet some naval representatives who were present at the conference. After discussing with them and after being prepared with my transcripts and test scores and all of that, I was offered a Naval ROTC scholarship on the spot. This is about 2 weeks before going to my dream school, Duke University. And I Didn't have a lot of time to think about it, but I did talk it over with my parents. My dad told me to chase the bag. My mom was a little bit hesitant. She came from a military family, but ultimately she wanted me to do what was best for me. So in that point, I decided to join the military. Did the ROTC program, and when I graduated from college, I also commissioned as an ensign in the Navy. And I was stationed in Florida for my first tour. That was on the USS Way City, which has since been decommissioned, which makes me feel a little bit old now. But I was there from 2013 to 2015, and I held a couple of jobs as the repair officer, the communications officer, and the collateral duty public affairs officer. Then I went to my second tour, which was on the USS Pinckney in San Diego. I'm not on that ship, but I am in San Diego in this picture. Those are actually my two godbrothers. We lived about 5 houses apart when I was growing up, and we had a chance to reunite back in San Diego. But I was there on that tour. I was the anti-submarine warfare officer. It sounds very militant, but we use methods to triangulate the position of a submarine. So it was a very cool job, very techy, kind of called on my math skills a little bit, but it was a good opportunity. I also was the command managed equal opportunity officer as a collateral duty on that tour. And then I shifted to be where I ended my career, which was in Atlanta, Georgia. I was an assistant professor of naval science at Morehouse College, and I was able to come back full circle as an ROTC instructor for being an ROTC student. Most rewarding tour that I had, because it was nice to give back to the students there. But I discovered that I wanted a little bit more freedom in my career. The Navy empowered me to free myself from myself and be able to project my voice and find my voice. And now that I have found it, I wanted different things for myself. I wanted a little bit more freedom to maneuver. I wanted to explore what the civilian sector had to offer. So in 2021, I transitioned out of the military.
So Nia, let's talk about dictatorships and ultimatums. Heavy on the dick. And so how did you have to let go of certain realities to find your own truth? And what is the advice you give to anybody who's facing an ultimatum?
So I'm going to answer the ultimatum question first. Ultimatums are never appropriate in any situation because it either forsakes yourself or it forsakes someone else. And then at the end of it, it's still not going to work typically. So speaking about ultimatums, I am a year and a half in on my police journey. The agreement that me and my fiance at the time agreed to was that I would do 2 years on the road because that was the requirement, and then I would come off of the road and I would join the community affairs department because we all know the issues that we have in policing, and I wanted to be a person who vetted police officers just to make sure that the intentions were good before they got on the road because we all know that police officers are necessary, but ones that don't need to be there, right? Again, a year and a half in, to the ultimatum, it was either choose your family, the one that I was creating, or choose the job. And at the time, I was envisioning the relationship that I wish I had still with my mother and my father together. And because of that, which is really just a dream. You know, when you're younger, you have, okay, I'm going to get married at 20-something. I'm going to have a child by 20 this. I'm going to have a house with a picket fence by 20 that. This was going along with what that idea was, but it wasn't reality, right? So I made the choice to leave. Very shortly after, I want to say maybe even 2 weeks, the relationship was over. And I was out of my dream job, and now it just existed. Now, I had another job for Progressive as an insurance consultant. However, it wasn't fulfilling. It was a super easy job, and it removed the people portion that I'm so used to in all of my careers. So, again, I would always say that compromise is acceptable, conceding is never acceptable. Because you throw yourself to the wayside and do something that's best for someone else, and it will not give you peace.
Christian household, but sometimes you lose religion to really find God. Can you talk a little bit more about that in your journey?
Yes, and I know it today to be this concept of embedded theology versus deliberative theology. Your embedded theology is what you grow up with. It is the things that you learn, the traditions that you pick up from your family and friends. But what I needed at a pivotal point in my life was to find God for myself. And that was my deliberative theology journey. Was being able to really dig into the beliefs that I had and that they were actually mine, and to cultivate that belief practice for myself. This came about during my last tour as an NROTC instructor at Morehouse. I was thriving at work, but everything else in my life was really falling apart. I was in a bad relationship. I was dealing with a lot of losses in my family, just back to back to back. And it caused me to pause and really reevaluate what I was prioritizing in my life. I realized I was putting work before everything else, even before my own grieving process, which wasn't okay, and it wasn't sustainable. So after some soul searching, I did a couple of things. I found a fitness and life coach to help me get my physical back right, because I was dealing with the lack of balance that I felt spiritually as well. So I found my life and fitness coach, wanted to get my physical right so I could focus on my mental too. He gave me a lot of exercises to do to really think about what I believed and what I was doing, the habits that I had in life, and how it was contributing to my current life state. And then he showed me that you have the power to change that. And those ideas really worked for me. I started to see changes over the next couple of months after that. And it made me realize that I needed to discover spirituality for myself. It didn't lead me away from the Christian faith, it just led me to a better understanding of it for myself, which is really powerful.
And so we're going to get to the thing of really making choices really fast. Talk to me about how BDSM saved your life.
BDPA.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So, explain what BDPA is.
BDPA is Black Data Processing Associates. It is a non-profit geared to expose the IT field to children of color. And I had the pleasure of participating in BDPA in their high school competition team as well as spring.
And so that life early on became a 360 for you. And Nia, I want you really to talk about like how your life could change in a week.
Right, so up here you have the pivotal people who had my life to change in me. My mom's not there, but she's involved as well. So on a Monday, I was received a text message from my youngest daughter's father that said that Deborah, who's pictured first, and the wife had just bought a 7-bedroom home in a very affluent neighborhood right up the street. And I always thought that her route was one that's less traveled, but it was magnificent how she was flourishing, so I texted her. And again, we're not in a relationship because the relationship was over. And I said, hey, congratulations, like, it's lit. And she said, you want to come see it? I couldn't pack my baby up quick enough because I was working from home at the time. So I packed up my smalls and we went over. And she showed me the entire house. It was magnificent. We got into, okay, so what are you doing now? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing insurance at the house. Pays a little bit more than policing did, which is but yeah, that's what I'm doing. And she said, well, we talked about IT a couple times. I said, well, yeah, but, and the but kept being really loud, to the point where she was like, whatever is here that you think you're responsible for, you're not responsible for. The only thing that you're responsible for is you and your children at this point, and everything else you have to let it go. So at that point in time, I left her house, called my mom, and said, you know, it was gushing, fangirl, and really like, Deborah bought this amazing house. Y'all know what a cedar room is in a house? It's just store first, so I'm sorry if anybody doesn't like that, because, you know, Peter and stuff. But that is some rich business behavior. It was me. But anyway, I'm knocking on her phone, and she's like, "Yeah, you should call Miss Teresa." And Miss Teresa is in black. Miss Teresa was the president of the Atlanta chapter of BDPA at the time when I was participating back in high school, the 10 years before. And I was initially struck by, like, I haven't talked to her in so long. We connected on Facebook. We like each other's things, but that's it. And he reached out and asked me for a favor or a lead. Would feel disingenuous. And my mom said that's not her personality. Just call. So I sent her a message on Facebook. She responded about 12 minutes with her number. We caught up in about 15 minutes. And at the end of the call, she was like, "Hey, just to let you know, the conference, the DDA conference, is this weekend. And they're having a career fair Friday and Saturday. You should go." And I said, "Okay, I'll think about doing that." I got off the phone with Miss Teresa. This is Tuesday. Got off with Miss Teresa, and I called my best friend who's pictured right there with Selena. And I said, "Selena, this opportunity has come up. What do you think I should do?" At the time, I had tickets to go to Miami, a flight to catch Friday morning, because she bought me tickets for my birthday to see Tiana Taylor. And I said, "Well, what do you think I should do?" She said, "Girl, if you don't move that flight." I was like, "What the?" And she said, "Let's go nuts. Like, it's either figure out what you're going to do with your life, or come see Tiana Taylor and still don't know," which is crazy, right? So this is still Tuesday, Wednesday. I get my resume together, go to my brother's house because my Microsoft Word was out. And if anybody's Microsoft Word goes out on the computer, you know it's expensive. Not a replacement, I'm just going to find someone else to utilize it. Went to my brother's house, got my resume approved by him and Miss Teresa. And then Thursday, I picked out an outfit. Friday, I got lost a couple times on the way.
How many times?
Twice. I went to 2 different Watsons in Atlanta, which is ridiculous. It's like, why didn't you figure out what the address was before you got there? But I made it, right? But now I only have an hour and a half before my now rescheduled flight takes off. So I'm hitting the ground running. And the first booth that I see when I go in was the most poorest booth, and it had Rosemary, who's the last person in. So I gave her my resume, which they don't take big resumes anymore. People, if you go to a career fair, they use QR codes and upload it. So that was a waste of time too, because I had to go and print it out early anyway. Well, I talked to Rosemary, and Rosemary said, "Oh, looks like they're busy with people who are interviewing," and to come back to the booth. Now, in my experience, because when I got my teaching job, I went to a career fair. They were like vultures. They didn't want you to leave the booth, because if you left the booth, then someone else would have picked you up, and now they're out of a camp. So when she told me to leave, I was discouraged, but I still kept on. I went to all the rest of the booths. They were more geared towards college students. I was about to leave and walk out of the door because no opportunities were presented like how it did when I went to the teaching career fair. But Rosemary said to come back. And my ego had to battle a little bit, and I ended up coming back to the table, and she said, "Oh, you came back, good. Here." And she circled different things on my resume and said, "You're going to go talk to," at the time it was Elijah, "and tell him these things off of your resume." So I did that. After that, I had an interview with my manager with me. And by the time I got to TSA, I was getting a phone call that I had gotten a job in Milwaukee. And I forgot to tell you how very good it was. The first thing she said to me was, "Are you willing to relocate?" I lied. I didn't know what life would be like in Milwaukee. I honestly didn't even know where it was on the map. It just wasn't a thing for me. But it just shows you, with a little bit of intention about what your next plan is going to be, you could literally change your life in a week.
Now, Raven, you planned that conference, right?
Yes, I was on the planning committee for that conference. How I got there, when I exited the Navy, I thought I had a contracting gig lined up for me. I did not. I was unemployed for 8 months. But 6 months into that 8-month employment, I was approached by Kerry Carter, he's in the first picture, he's wearing glasses. He was my mentor. He had followed me from the time that I picked up the ROTC scholarship and so did. And he said, "Hey, are you interested in being a nonprofit board member?" And I didn't know what that meant, but I told him that I absolutely was, because I've already benefited so much from the organization. So I joined in March 2022 the BDPA National Board as the South Region Director at the time. And 3 months into that, I was told that the career fair was my baby. So I started planning it. I started working with the different sponsors that we had. And I also, along that time period, I ended up finding a job in May in sales that I did enjoy at all. And I left that job the day before the conference started. And I didn't have any intentions at that time of interviewing for anything. I was a little bit over the job search at that point, and I just wanted to give myself the conference to enjoy and relax until I could regain my composure the next week and get back into it. But during this time period, I also met Rosemary as I was helping to set up the booth for Most Employers. And she did one of these, and she brought me over. She said, "What you do?" And just like that. And I told her, well, actually, as of 2 days ago, nothing. At the moment, I'm still in the search, and I'm going to pick it up after this. He said, "Why don't you pick it up now? There's an opportunity here. You plan this, you know this." I said, "Yeah, I know. But I was just tired. I needed a break." But I told her I'd take her up on it, and I talked to the representatives to see what kind of positions they were offering. And they had a position that, even though I had not had that experience directly in my career, I could say that I could speak to it using transferable skills and some of the work that I had done in my collateral duties that I had served, especially as the Equal Opportunity Officer survey that we give out to all of the sailors. So I spoke to that, and I ended up with the job offer on Friday. So from Tuesday to Friday, I had no prospects, but that 3-day period changed everything. And at that time, I was not sure if I wanted to relocate either, but I was interested in it. I had relocated before, so I didn't see this as something that would be much different from that, except it's cold here, and I've been in a cold place before. But ironically, after that conference that Monday, I got a call back from a job that was in Georgia that I applied to in July. And that job, they ended up offering me a job as well. So now I have a choice to stay in Georgia or move to Wisconsin. And after doing some digging, I realized that Georgia position wasn't the culture fit that I was looking for. So I knew that Wisconsin and those employers opportunity was my choice.
Just for y'all. But I want you to respond to why it's important to serve and find satisfaction, even if it's the uncomfortable choice.
So what I've come to learn spiritually about circulation is you can't get until you give. At that time when I was unemployed, I was looking to get something. So much so that I was applying for jobs that were well below what I deserved to be paid. But when I stepped into the seat of service, I realized that opportunities really opened from that. My mindset changed from that because I went from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And I knew that even though I didn't know anything about being a nonprofit board member, I knew how to care. I knew how to pay attention to detail. I knew how to ask the right questions. And that was what I needed to make things happen in that role. And it led me to know that I had what it took already. And that mindset changed everything for me.
Thank you, Ray Ray. All right, that's my TED Talk. I feel like we have space for 1 to 2 questions. All right, so go ahead.
Curious about your purchase of Milwaukee. I'm not sure if it's a college, but yeah, what's your experience if you think that choice paid off, that process where you are in Milwaukee now?
Yep. So how I understand it is, do you think moving to Milwaukee was a good choice? Correct?
Like how you live in Milwaukee.
How do you like Milwaukee? Be easy.
We don't want to get jumped in.
Right, that's what I show Milwaukee.
I was gonna say, I do like Milwaukee. I like Milwaukee for me because it's very family oriented. And again, back when I was at home, I had never left the state of in Georgia, even when I was in college. My master's degree was online, and my undergrad was 15 minutes from the Florida border. So coming to Milwaukee, I was able to experience a different life, one that was peaceful, one that was quiet, and one that was extremely family-oriented. You guys have a park on every corner, and that was something I didn't see that much in Atlanta. And when the sun is out, everyone is on. Even down to picking up my child from school, it was very nerve-wracking because I wasn't used to people like walking their kids to school. There's no buses. It's just very involved and family first. And for me, coming here as a single parent, it was very beneficial as a turning point to get outside of my comfort zone and figure out who I am outside of my support system.
Likewise, I really enjoy Milwaukee. My neighbors are so kind. They bake cookies for me when I showed up. Never had that happen. I'm from the South, but I mean, you get a really good dose of hospitality, but there's also a lot of things to do. The summertime up here is beautiful, so I definitely appreciate that choice. And Nina did mention I don't want to steal her thunder, but I think we made the right work choice too. We were both recently promoted in our roles, so that's
I'll take another question. Anybody? Okay, go ahead.
So to me, both your stories sound like you managed to find a little resilience. And if today all of that went away, let's say the company shut down that you worked for or something like that, what would you do that you found was helpful before, but also what would you do different?
So how, did you get that?
For the
Oh, for the people at home. So you made a lot of choices out of resilience. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's trauma informed because we are from a healed space. If the choices that you made landed you here and life is good and the world crashed, what in your toolbox would you use moving forward?
I would use the very thing that I'm doing currently, like right now, in this space. This brings me joy. Just telling my story, or a story, or just relating to people in a close space. When you're talking about yourself and you're telling the truth, the nerves immediately wear off as soon as you start talking and you crack a joke. And to be relatable to other people, especially in this climate currently, it's really rewarding. So I would probably be doing this very.
I love the question, and one thing I would do, and I think the meditative prompt was about this, but I do things that remind me of my joy. Because in that period when I did lose everything, I have forgotten to do that for myself, and it was all about how do I get the next full-time role. And in the meantime, I was doing other things, but it really put me in a place that was dark unnecessarily, because even though I didn't have a role at that time, everything was brimming with opportunity. So I would do that, and as Nia stated, I love being in rooms like this with creative minds. I think that's beautiful. I love the fact that I got into nonprofit. I actually served on another nonprofit board as well, and I still serve on BDPA's board as the Midwest Region VP now. I would dig into those networks to see what opportunities are available and continue to serve in those networks along the way, because I know that that has changed my trajectory.
So Raven, what is your degree in bachelor's?
Neurobiology.
Drops mine.
I think you would become the next X-member. If there's nothing else, we're gonna tighten up and you guys can network. Nia and Ray will be here after. So as long as